From the very first shot of Steven Spielberg's Empire of the Sun, the movie announces its intentions. A placid river upset first by flowers, and then a broken coffin.
It's a way to introduce the film's deliberately stunted, childlike perspective.
Empire of the Sun has been criticized over the years, largely due to what was perceived as Spielberg's sentimental approach.
A criticism we essentially reject, though there's little denying the Spielberg touch.
But the thing about Empire is its successes as a work of art have everything to do with Spielberg capturing, with sensitivity and care, the world as a child would see it, and very few other directors would have made those choices.
Take this early sequence in which our hero, Jim, based on major author J.G. Ballard's own harrowing experiences as a boy, is driven through a bustling section of Shanghai and sees the world from which he and his wealthy parents have been deliberately isolated.
The world outside, which frightens and excites Jim in equal measure, will soon crash into his very privileged world, as the things by which he's so fascinated puncture the safety of the car window, of his house, of his parents' embrace, of childhood itself.
Spielberg takes great pains to show that despite the world of the Chinese and the invading Japanese forces being something Jim cannot fully make sense of, this is a flaw in his perspective, and it's only through exposure to them they cease to be a terrifying thing. Even if, of course, Jim can never fully understand them because even his crude entry into adulthood isn't complete by the movie's end.
The world is still a mystery, because Jim will always be a castaway from paradise.
That one has whiskey, gin, and a white piano. That one has whiskey, gin... No, just whiskey and a radiogram.
What about the bordered one, right here?
That one has a dance floor made of mirrors, radiogram, a fountain, crystal chandeliers.
Crystal chandeliers?
I think they were crystal.
I think you're tired, Jim.
What about cash?
Say, Jim, what about a little money?
Frank, basically, I did see some money. Piles of notes on the dressing table. I'm taking you to that one.
Every sequence in this movie is a triumph.
Jim's vision of an orderly world enthralled to the great plains he admires is set up beautifully.
Aircraft sighting. He's on my tail! On my tail!
And right over the hill from this fantasy made from death he can't make sense of lies the reality that will claim his innocence.
God in the sky, in the form of a plane, and then the men who need war machines.
The sequence of Jim losing his parents has the same dynamic. The planes he loves separate him from his mother, and like that, the harrowing reality crashes into him.
Hang on to Jamie!
Jamie, don't let go!
Spielberg's world, influenced of course by the divorce that rocked his childhood, is always one without a true adult authority.
The disintegrating families of his early work set the table for this, but Jim's existence has, fittingly, a science fiction character to it. To be expected when a sci-fi author and a maker of sci-fi entertainment meet in the middle of narrative.
This is a world of, as Jim himself says, opulence, but it's been abandoned, repurposed by an invasion force. The rich colonizing class are rendered helpless as infants, to quote a later Spielberg film, in the New World Order. And so Jim's relative maturity as a boy makes him about everybody's equal.
Spielberg marks time silently through the falling water levels of the pool.
The only person who manages to keep his head above water is John Malkovich's shiftless operator, a man who looks at chaos and sees opportunity, for whom beatings and imprisonment are but a minor annoyance.
Spielberg, in keeping with the new reality ruled by this man, doesn't show Malkovich's face until he's being set upon by the army. The real man is the one who's been beaten. Who knows what it's like to have nothing? This is Jim's first lesson.
I want these back when they're done.
Macy. Casey.
His second life as a scrounger starts in his acquaintance with Malkovich's Basie. It's how he manages to survive.
Spielberg is more than ready to present the world through his boyish enthusiasm for grifting.
Use your wedge!
Boy, running wild. Spends most of his time at the 19th hole.
You're going to be blackballed by the country club, Jim.
Hello, Jim. Oh, that's a splendid cabbage. Thanks, Jim.
Despite his usual flourishes of epicness,
And we must say, the handful of shots that deliberately evoke Gone with the Wind and Lawrence of Arabia are impressive in scale, but also impressive in the way they don't really call attention to themselves. Life around Jim is enormous.
but this movie always remains essentially intimate. The oppressive air of desperation and misery certainly helps.
Attention prisoners for camp transport. Assembly outside.
As usual with Spielberg, it's quite clear just how much of this movie is deeply personal to him.
A little boy obsessed with planes, hanging Norman Rockwell paintings in his bunk, and making deals with the adults around him to advance his personal standing.
Which explains why the best images in this movie are of Jim and his planes.
These sequences never cease to make us emotional.
This is some of the best work Spielberg has ever done.
Spielberg changes the lighting and the movement of his camera, snapping into focus whenever Jim is closest to the things he loves, yet farthest from the people he loves.
Touching, communing with the engine of his obsessions, the thing that reminds him he's still a kid in desperate, unnatural circumstances.
The world comes to an end for Jim, but in moments where he can see planes in flight, see the men flying them, wave to them, salute them, it sometimes seems for a moment like it might have been worth it for young Jim.
The closer he comes to his boyish dreams coming true, the further he gets from the protection of his innocence. Like flight itself, Jim's happiness cannot last long.
Spielberg resists most of his more egregiously cloying instincts as a filmmaker in showing the world as Jim becomes a part of it. Most points are made without words, through action. Even John Williams, usually so insistent with his scores, doesn't over-enunciate anything.
Life is hard here, and though a pragmatic boy can find joy and wonder in it, the harshness is never soft-pedaled.
Go! B-51 Cadillac of the sky!
This scene, more than any other in Spielberg's career until The Fabelmans, just fucking gets to me. It took me a long time to understand why I can't watch this scene without breaking down. And it's just that it captures what it feels like to be alive. And in my brain, the brain of anyone born anxious and raised curious, for me it's the scene that always makes me cry, because I know only too well what it's like to wish so desperately that your brain would stop feeding you things to think about, and to say, I wish badly that someone had told me to try not to think so much, and that it had worked.
Get down, Jim! Get down! Go on, get down!
I'm beautiful! I touched them! I touched them! I felt their heat! I can taste them in my mouth! Oil and cordite!
Jim, come back to the hospital! I need some help with the hospital!
Dr. Rawlins, do you remember how we helped to build the runway? If we'd died like the others, our bones would be in the runway! In a way, it's our runway!
No, it's their runway, Jim! Try not to think so much. Try not to think so much!
I can't remember what my parents looked like. I used to play bridge with my mother in her bedroom. She used to comb her hair. I'd watch her. She had dark hair. Immortus sum, immortus est, immortus est, pares discerendo, geno vincim. Immortus sum, immortus est, immortus est, vigendo vincimus, pares discerendo, iundum est, mihi iundum est, vigendo vincimus, pares discerendo, mihi iundum est, iundum est.
This bit, where Jim discovers sexuality in the reflection of a bombing raid.
He's more at home in the shadow of destruction than he is in watching two people be intimate.
Jim's violent self-discovery is, like that of the heroine in Sugarland Express, achieved through the discarding of objects, through the loss of the ego and the self.
His fantasies of lucre and materialism are evidence of his derangement.
But things can't get worse. What are things? What are even the planes he so loves, if life is otherwise empty?